On an ordinary day, a millionaire decides to come home early. As she opens the door, she hears her husband say something that made her shudder. "I've already put poison in her glass. Now we just have to wait." She then embarks on a passionate journey for justice and happiness. The rain fell incessantly over New York City, turning the streets into concrete rivers and causing pedestrians to hurry in search of shelter. Amidst this grey scenario, Sarah Thompson, a 35-year-old woman, carefully drove her car through the congested avenues. Her brown eyes, usually lively, reflected a weariness that went beyond the physical. The day at the law firm where she worked had been quiet, but something deep inside was troubling her. Sarah parked her car in the garage of the building where she lived and sighed deeply before turning off the engine. For a moment, she sat there, watching the raindrops run down the windshield, as if they could wash away her worries. She grabbed her purse, opened her umbrella and walked towards the elevator. Upon entering the apartment, Sarah was greeted by the usual silence. Her husband, Michael, usually came home late from work, so she didn't expect to find him at home at this hour. She left her keys on the entryway table and walked to the kitchen to get herself a glass of water. That's when she heard it. Voices coming from the office at the end of the hallway. One of them was unmistakably Michael's. The other, a female voice she didn't recognize, spoke in a low and urgent tone. Intrigued, Sarah silently approached the half-open door. "Are you sure this will work?" the female voice asked, clearly anxious. "Absolutely," Michael replied, his tone cold and calculating. "I've already put what we needed in her glass. Now we just have to wait for it to take effect." Sarah's heart raced. Her body went cold, and she had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. What the hell was going on? Her husband, the man she had shared her life with for 10 years, was planning something against her. With the utmost care not to make noise, Sarah retreated down the hallway. Her mind was spinning, trying to process what she had just heard. She needed to get out of there, think, breathe. She grabbed her keys again and left the apartment, this time not caring about the rain that was still falling. She drove aimlessly through the streets of New York, Michael's words echoing in her head. Now we just have to wait for it to take effect. What did he mean by that? What kind of substance had he put in her glass? And who was that woman? Almost without realizing it, Sarah found herself parking in front of her best friend's house, Jessica. The two had known each other since college and had always been each other's safe haven. If there was someone Sarah could count on at that moment, it was Jessica. She rang the doorbell, trembling not just from cold, but from fear and confusion. When Jessica opened the door, one look was enough for her to realize something was terribly wrong. "Sarah, what happened?" Jessica asked, pulling her friend inside. The words came out in a confused and broken rush, interrupted by sobs. Sarah told her about the conversation she had overheard, about her suspicions, about the fear that now consumed her. Jessica listened in silence, her face a mixture of shock and concern. "You can't go back home," Jessica said finally, her voice firm. "We don't know what Michael is planning, but it's obvious you're not safe there." Sarah nodded, grateful for her friend's decision. "But what do I do now, Jess? I don't even know where to start." Jessica thought for a moment, biting her lower lip as she always did when she was concentrating. "I think we need professional help. I know a private investigator, a discreet and efficient guy. He can find out what Michael is up to without raising suspicions." The idea of hiring a private investigator seemed like something out of a movie, but Sarah knew she needed to understand what was going on. Reluctantly, she agreed with Jessica's suggestion. While her friend made some calls, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. How had it come to this? Her marriage to Michael had always seemed solid, based on mutual trust and companionship. Sure, in recent months, he had been more distant, more reserved, but she had attributed this to work stress. Now, looking back, she realized the signs she had ignored. The secret phone calls, the business trips that became more frequent, the way he changed the subject when she asked about his day. Jessica returned to the living room, interrupting Sarah's thoughts. "I spoke with the investigator. He can meet us tomorrow morning to discuss the case." Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Thank you, Jess. I don't know what I'd do without you." "Hey, that's what friends are for," Jessica replied, hugging her. "Now let's get the guest room ready for you. Tomorrow will be a long day." That night, lying in Jessica's guest bed, Sarah struggled to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's face, heard his cold voice saying those terrible words. How could she have been so wrong about the man she had married? The hours dragged on, and when the sun finally rose, Sarah was already up, exhausted but determined. As she prepared for the meeting with the investigator, a certainty formed in her heart. Her life was about to change drastically, and she would need all her strength and courage to face what was to come. The sound of the doorbell startled her. Jessica went to answer, and soon after called Sarah to the living room. There, a middle-aged man with keen eyes and a discreet posture waited. It was time to start unraveling the mystery that her life had become. Sarah took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked towards the unknown, ready to take the first step in search of the truth, not knowing that this journey would lead her down paths she never imagined she would travel. The private investigator, who introduced himself as Jake Miller, listened attentively as Sarah recounted the events of the previous night. His astute eyes didn't miss a single detail, observing every expression and gesture of the woman before him. Jessica, seated next to her friend, offered silent support, holding her hand during the most difficult moments of the account. "Mrs. Thompson," Jake began, his voice calm and professional, "based on what you've told me, we have sufficient reasons to investigate your husband. However, I need you to understand, this process may reveal things that you might prefer not to know. Are you prepared for that?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, the reality of the situation weighing on her shoulders. Finally, she nodded. "I need to know the truth, Mr. Miller, no matter how painful it may be." Jake nodded in agreement. "Very well, I'll begin immediately. For now, the most important thing is to maintain appearances. You need to act normally, as if nothing has changed. This is crucial to not alert your husband." The idea of pretending normalcy made Sarah's stomach churn, but she knew it was necessary. "And what about what he might have put in my drink?" "We'll analyze that too," Jake assured her. "I ask that you avoid consuming anything at home for now. If you can, bring samples of food and drinks so we can examine them." After the investigator left, Sarah found herself facing an even greater challenge, returning home and facing Michael. Jessica insisted that she stay, but they both knew that a prolonged absence would raise suspicions. "Call me any time," Jessica said, hugging her friend tightly. "And remember, you're stronger than you think." With a heavy heart, Sarah drove back to the apartment she shared with Michael. Each mile traveled seemed to increase the distance between the life she knew and the uncertain future that awaited her. Upon entering the house, she was greeted by Michael's familiar smile. "Hi, honey. I missed you last night. Where were you?" Sarah forced a smile, mentally thanking her years of practice as a lawyer that now helped her maintain her composure. "I got stuck at the office until late. A complicated case. I ended up sleeping there." Michael seemed to accept the explanation without question. "That's a shame. I had prepared a special dinner for us." The mention of dinner made Sarah freeze inside, remembering the conversation she had overheard. "Oh really, that's so kind of you. Can we reschedule?" "Of course," Michael replied, kissing her softly. "How about tonight?" Sarah agreed, feeling like an actress in a surreal play. As Michael talked about his plans for dinner, she couldn't help but analyze every word, every gesture, looking for signs of the man she had heard the night before. The following days turned into an elaborate dance of secrets and appearances. Sarah maintained constant contact with Jake, providing information about Michael's routine and samples of food from the house. The investigator, in turn, began to draw a disturbing picture of Sarah's husband's activities. On a particularly tense afternoon, Jake requested an urgent meeting. In a discreet cafe in the city center, he presented his initial findings. "Mrs. Thompson, the evidence we've collected so far is concerning," Jake began, his tone grave. "Your husband has been frequenting unusual places for someone in his position. Luxury restaurants at odd hours, discreet hotels, meetings in isolated parking lots." Sarah felt the air escape from her lungs. Part of her still hoped that it was all just a terrible misunderstanding. Jake continued, "Moreover, we've identified suspicious financial transactions, large sums of money being moved through offshore accounts. This suggests illegal activities," Sarah completed, her voice a whisper. The investigator nodded somberly. Exactly, and there's more. We managed to intercept some communications. Your husband seems to be involved with dangerous people. Sarah's head was spinning. How could Michael, the man she had known for so many years, be involved in something like this? And what about what I heard that night? About putting something in my drink? Jake hesitated for a moment. The analyses of the samples you provided haven't revealed anything conclusive yet, but we're monitoring closely. Mrs. Thompson, I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. Whatever your husband is planning, it's something big and potentially very dangerous. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. What should I do now? Continue acting normally, Jake advised, but stay alert. Any change in his behavior, anything out of the ordinary, let me know immediately. And as a precaution, I suggest you prepare an emergency bag. Clothes, documents, money, keep it hidden but accessible. The idea of having to prepare to flee from her own home was surreal, but Sarah knew she couldn't ignore the advice. As she left the cafe, she felt as if she were living in a suspense movie where every shadow hid a potential danger. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself divided between two worlds. During the day, she continued her routine at the law firm, struggling to stay focused on her cases while her mind buzzed with worries. At night, at home, each interaction with Michael became an exercise in self-control, every word measured, every gesture calculated. One night, while Michael was taking a shower, Sarah decided to risk a quick search of his office. With her heart racing, she rummaged through drawers and cabinets, looking for anything that could shed light on her husband's secret activities. That's when she found, hidden in the back of a drawer, a folder with documents that made her blood run cold. Contracts with unknown names, records of enormous transactions, and what appeared to be a detailed plan for something she couldn't fully comprehend. The sound of the shower stopping brought her back to reality. Quickly, Sarah photographed the documents with her cell phone and put everything back in place, leaving the office just seconds before Michael appeared in the hallway. "Everything okay, honey?" he asked, noticing her troubled expression. Sarah forced a smile. "Yes, just tired. Tough day at work." That night, lying next to the man who now seemed like a stranger, Sarah fought against the urge to flee. The revelations of the last few days had shaken the foundations of her life, and she knew the worst was yet to come. As sleep eluded her, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. She would uncover the truth no matter the cost, and when she did, she would be ready to face the consequences, whatever they might be. Outside, New York City continued its nightly dance, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside that apartment. And Sarah, caught between the past she knew and the uncertain future, knew she was about to embark on the most challenging journey of her life. The next morning, Sarah woke up feeling as if she hadn't slept at all. Her eyes burned, and her mind was still filled with images of the documents she had found in Michael's office. Beside her, her husband slept deeply, his face serene in contrast to the whirlwind of emotions she was experiencing. Careful not to wake him, Sarah got up and went to the kitchen. As she prepared coffee, her mind worked frantically, trying to connect the dots between what she had seen in the documents and the information Jake had shared. Her cell phone vibrated in her pocket, making her startle. It was a message from Jake. "Urgent news, can we meet in an hour?" Sarah responded affirmatively and began planning an excuse to leave. When Michael entered the kitchen, she was already ready, dressed for work. "Leaving early today?" he asked, kissing her on the cheek. "Yes, I have an important meeting first thing," Sarah replied, proud of how natural her voice sounded. "Don't expect me for lunch, I'll probably be stuck in the office all day." Michael nodded, serving himself coffee. "All right, honey, good luck with the meeting." As she drove to the meeting place arranged with Jake, Sarah couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Despite everything she had discovered, a part of her still struggled against the idea that Michael, the man she had loved for so many years, could be involved in something so dark. The investigator was waiting for her in a small cafe, away from the city center. As soon as Sarah sat down, Jake got straight to the point. "Mrs. Thompson, we've managed to identify the woman who was with your husband that night." Sarah felt her heart race. "Who is she?" Jake slid a folder across the table. "Her name is Amanda Carter. She's a lawyer specializing in corporate law, known for representing, let's say, controversial clients." Sarah opened the folder, coming face to face with a photo of an elegant woman, about 40 years old. There was something familiar about that face, but she couldn't identify what. "There's more," Jake continued. "Amanda has connections to a group of businessmen involved in a large money laundering scheme. And from what we've been able to gather, your husband is at the center of this scheme." The revelation hit Sarah like a punch to the stomach. She had always known Michael was ambitious, but she never imagined he could be involved in something so serious. How did you discover all this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jake hesitated for a moment. "We have our sources, but the most important thing now is that we've found evidence that your husband and Amanda are planning something big, something that involves you, Mrs. Thompson." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean by involves me? We don't have all the details yet, but it seems they intend to use your position as a respected lawyer to legitimize some transactions, possibly without your knowledge or consent." Sarah's head was spinning. The implications of what Jake was saying were devastating. Not only was her personal life in ruins, but her career and reputation were also at risk. "What should I do?" she asked, feeling more lost than ever. "For now, continue acting normally," Jake advised. "But we need to intensify our surveillance. With your permission, I'd like to install some listening devices in your home and Michael's office." Sarah hesitated. The idea of spying on her own husband went against everything she believed in, but the circumstances were extreme. "Do whatever is necessary," she finally agreed. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself living a double life. During the day, she maintained her routine at the law firm, struggling to concentrate on her cases while her mind buzzed with worries. At night, at home, each interaction with Michael became an exercise in acting, every word measured, every gesture calculated. A week after the listening devices were installed, Jake contacted her again, this time with an alarming discovery. "Mrs. Thompson, we intercepted a conversation between your husband and Amanda. They're planning to use your signature on some crucial documents for their scheme." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "What do you mean? Do they intend to forge my signature?" "Not exactly," Jake explained. "From what we understand, they plan to make you sign the documents without realizing what you're actually signing, probably mixing them with other papers from your work." The revelation left Sarah stunned. The idea that Michael could manipulate her in this way was almost unbearable, but at the same time, a part of her felt relieved to finally understand the plan. "What do you suggest I do?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "We need to be careful," Jake warned. "If they realize you know, they might try something more drastic. I suggest we start preparing a counterattack. We can use this attempt of theirs against them." Sarah nodded, feeling a determination grow within her. "I'm listening." In the weeks that followed, Sarah worked tirelessly with Jake to develop a plan. They decided to allow Michael and Amanda to proceed with their strategy, but with one important difference: Sarah would be prepared. She began to examine meticulously every document that came into her hands, both at work and at home. Jake helped her identify subtle signs that could indicate fraudulent or manipulated documents. Meanwhile, life at home became increasingly tense. Michael, unaware that he was being observed, began to act more affectionate and attentive, which only increased Sarah's anguish. Every gesture of affection now seemed calculated. Every word of love sounded false. One evening during dinner, Michael casually mentioned a new project at work. "Honey, I'm going to need your help with some documents in the next few days," he said, his tone casual. "Nothing major, just a few signatures for a new client." Sarah felt her heart race but maintained her composure. "Sure, dear. Just let me know when you need it." That night, lying next to the man who now seemed like a stranger, Sarah fought against a storm of emotions: anger, sadness, fear, and surprisingly, a hint of excitement. For the first time in weeks, she felt in control of the situation. The next morning, as she prepared for work, Sarah looked at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back seemed different, stronger, more determined. She knew the next few days would be crucial, that every move should be calculated with precision. As she left the house, Sarah made a silent promise to herself. No matter what happened, she would uncover the whole truth and protect not only herself, but also everything she had built throughout her career. The game was about to change, and Sarah was ready to make her move. The days that followed were a test of nerves for Sarah. Every moment at home was like walking through a minefield, where every word, every gesture could reveal that she knew more than she should. At work, her concentration oscillated between her real cases and constant vigilance for any suspicious document that Michael might try to slip past her. On a particularly tense afternoon, Sarah received a call from Jake. "Mrs. Thompson, we have a situation." The investigator's voice sounded grave on the other end of the line. "We intercepted a conversation between your husband and Amanda. They plan to present the documents for your signature tonight." Sarah felt her stomach churn. "So soon? I thought we'd have more time." "Apparently there's been a change of plans," Jake explained. "They mentioned a window of opportunity they can't miss. Mrs. Thompson, you need to be prepared." After hanging up, Sarah spent the next few minutes breathing deeply, trying to calm her nerves. She knew the crucial moment had arrived. Everything they had prepared for in the last few weeks would be put to the test that night. When she arrived home, Sarah found Michael in the living room, a nervous smile on his face. "Hi, honey. Good thing you came home early. I have some papers that need your signature. It's for that project I mentioned, remember?" Sarah forced a smile. "Of course, dear. Let me just take a quick shower and I'll be right back to take care of that." In the bathroom, away from Michael's eyes, Sarah sent a quick message to Jake. "It's happening now. I'm following the plan." When she returned to the living room, Michael had already spread several documents on the coffee table. He began to explain each one, his voice sounding strangely tense. "This one here is just a formality for the new client," he said, pointing to a particularly voluminous document. "And this is related to that pro bono case I mentioned last week." Sarah nodded, feigning interest while carefully examining each paper. Her eyes, trained over the last few weeks with Jake, soon identified the subtle inconsistencies in the fraudulent documents. "Michael," she said, keeping her voice calm, "these documents seem a bit different from the usual ones. Do you mind if I take a closer look before signing?" For a brief moment, Sarah saw panic in her husband's eyes. "Oh, there's no need, honey. They're just routine formalities. I'm sure everything is in order." "Even so," Sarah insisted, "I prefer to review them carefully. You know how careful I am with these things." Michael hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "Well, if you insist, but the client is in a hurry. Could you return them by tomorrow morning?" "Sure," Sarah replied, gathering the papers. "I'll take a look in the office and tomorrow morning I'll return everything signed." As soon as she was alone in the office, Sarah began to examine each document meticulously. As she suspected, she found hidden clauses, references to shell companies, and questionable financial transactions skillfully disguised amid innocuous legal language. With trembling hands, she photographed each compromising page and sent them to Jake. Then she called him. "You were right," she whispered on the phone. "The documents are exactly what we suspected. What do I do now?" "Stay calm," Jake instructed. "We're going to use this to our advantage. Tomorrow, when you return the documents, say that you noticed some inconsistencies and that you'd like to discuss them directly with the client." The plan was risky, but Sarah knew it was her best chance to obtain more information and possibly make Michael and Amanda reveal more than they intended. The next morning, Sarah found Michael in the kitchen, anxious for news. "So, honey, did you manage to review everything?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Sarah took a deep breath, preparing herself for what was to come. "Yes, Michael. Actually, I noticed some interesting things in these documents. I think it would be better if we discussed this with the client in person. Could you arrange a meeting?" Michael's face visibly paled. "Oh, I don't know if that would be possible. The client is very private and—" "I insist," Sarah interrupted him, her voice firm. "If I'm going to sign something so important, I need to understand all the details. It's standard procedure, you know that." Cornered, Michael had no choice but to agree. "All right, I'll see what I can do." In the hours that followed, Sarah felt the tension grow exponentially. She knew she had forced Michael's hand and that now he and Amanda would have to improvise quickly. At the end of the afternoon, Michael surprised her with news. "I managed to arrange a dinner with the client for tonight. He agreed to meet us at La Stella restaurant at 8 p.m. Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of anxiety and determination. "Great. I'll be ready." As she got ready for dinner, Sarah exchanged frantic messages with Jake, finalizing the last details of the plan. The investigator assured her that he would be nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. The journey to the restaurant was silent, the tension palpable between Sarah and Michael. When they arrived, they were led to a reserved table at the back of the establishment. There, Sarah finally came face to face with Amanda Carter. The lawyer was exactly as in the photo, elegant with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Beside her was a middle-aged man who was introduced as Robert Johnson, the supposed client. "So, Sarah," Amanda began, her tone falsely friendly, "Michael told me you had some doubts about the documents. Why don't you tell us what's worrying you?" Sarah felt all eyes on her. It was the moment of truth. With a calmness that surprised even herself, she began to expose her doubts, carefully revealing that she knew more than she should without showing all her cards. As she spoke, she noticed the growing nervousness in Michael, the furtive glances exchanged between him and Amanda, and the increasingly tense expression of Robert Johnson. What happened next was a careful dance of half-truths and elaborate explanations. Amanda, skilled as she was, tried to dispel Sarah's concerns with plausible explanations for each inconsistency pointed out. However, Sarah was prepared. For each explanation, she had a counter-argument. For each evasion, a more incisive question. Gradually, the facades began to crumble. It was then that Robert Johnson, visibly disturbed, abruptly stood up. "This is ridiculous. I didn't come here to be interrogated. Michael, solve this or the deal is off." At that moment, everything seemed to happen in slow motion. Michael, losing his composure, shouted at Sarah. Amanda tried to intervene, her voice rising in tone. And then, in the midst of the chaos, Jake appeared, accompanied by 2 police officers. "Robert Johnson," one of the officers announced, "you're being detained for questioning on suspicion of financial fraud and money laundering." The restaurant plunged into a stunned silence, broken only by Robert's protests and the shocked whispers of the other patrons. Sarah watched almost in a trance as her husband, Amanda, and Robert were led out of the establishment. When the whirlwind finally subsided, Sarah found herself sitting alone at the table, her hands trembling slightly. Jake approached, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You were amazing, Mrs. Thompson," he said softly. "Thanks to you, we managed to dismantle an operation we've been investigating for months." Sarah nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "And now, what happens to me?" "Now," Jake replied, "you're safe, but we have a long road ahead to clarify all the details of this operation. We'll need your testimony and cooperation in the coming weeks." As she left the restaurant supported by Jake, Sarah felt a confused mixture of emotions, relief for finally knowing the truth, sadness for Michael's betrayal, fear of the uncertain future that awaited her. But above all, there was a growing sense of strength and determination. She had faced the unthinkable and emerged victorious. Now it was time to rebuild her life, one step at a time. The days following the dramatic night at La Stella restaurant were a whirlwind for Sarah. The apartment she once called home now seemed like a strange and hostile place, filled with memories of a life that no longer existed. With Jessica's help, she gathered her essential belongings and temporarily moved to a hotel, seeking a refuge where she could process everything that had happened. The news about the fraud scheme and the arrest of Michael, Amanda, and Robert Johnson exploded in the media. Sarah found herself at the center of a media storm, her name and face plastered across newspapers and news broadcasts. Some portrayed her as a heroine who helped dismantle a criminal scheme. Others insinuated that she might have been complicit. Amidst the chaos, Sarah found an unexpected anchor, her work. The law firm where she worked, after a thorough internal investigation, concluded that she had no involvement in Michael's illegal activities. Her colleagues and superiors, impressed with her integrity and courage, offered full support. One afternoon, while reviewing some documents in her office, trying to keep herself busy, Sarah received a surprise visit from Mr. Anderson, the senior partner of the firm. "Sarah," he began, his tone gentle, "how are you holding up?" She sighed, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability. "Honestly, Mr. Anderson, I'm trying to keep my head above water. Each day is a challenge." The veteran lawyer nodded understandingly. "It's understandable. What you've been through, well, it's not something anyone can get over overnight. But I want you to know that everyone here admires your strength and integrity." Sarah felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot to me. Actually, Mr. Anderson continued, I came here to make you a proposal. With everything that's happened, we've realized that we need to strengthen our compliance and corporate ethics team. We'd like you to lead this new department. The proposal caught Sarah by surprise. Me, but with all the negative publicity surrounding me? That's exactly why, he gently interrupted. You've been through something that many of us only see in movies. Your experience and perspective will be invaluable in preventing similar situations in the future. Sarah reflected for a moment. The idea of using her painful experience for something positive was tempting. Can I think about it? Of course, Mr. Anderson smiled. Take all the time you need. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself torn between the desire to accept the new challenge and the fear of not being up to the task. It was during one of her long conversations with Jessica that she finally found clarity. Sarah, Jessica said, holding her friend's hands, you're the strongest person I know. You've been through hell and come out the other side not just surviving, but ready to make a difference. If anyone can lead this department, it's you. Jessica's words resonated deeply with Sarah. She realized that despite everything she had lost, she still had much to offer. The next morning, Sarah marched determinedly to Mr. Anderson's office. I accept the proposal, she announced, feeling a confidence she hadn't experienced in weeks. The senior lawyer's smile lit up the room. Excellent. Let's start the preparations immediately. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activities. Sarah dove headfirst into creating the new department, developing policies, training, and procedures. Her legal knowledge, combined with her personal experience, proved to be a powerful combination. In parallel, she continued cooperating with the authorities in the investigation of Michael's scheme and his associates. Each testimony, each clarification was painful, but Sarah found strength in the idea that she was doing the right thing. One afternoon, after a long deposition session, Sarah decided to take a walk through Central Park, seeking a moment of peace. As she walked along the tree-lined paths, reflecting on the ups and downs of the past few months, she heard a familiar voice calling her name. Sarah, is that really you? Turning around, she came face to face with David, an old friend from college days. His warm smile was like a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day. David, it's been so long, she exclaimed, genuinely happy to see a friendly face. The two embraced, and soon they were sitting on a nearby bench, catching up. David, now a respected psychologist, listened attentively as Sarah shared a summary of recent events in her life. Wow, Sarah, he said when she finished. How you've been through so much. How are you feeling now? The question, so simple yet so profound, made Sarah pause. Honestly, I'm still processing everything. Some days are easier, others not so much. But I'm moving forward, one step at a time. David nodded understandingly. You know, in my work, I see many people dealing with trauma and betrayal. What you're feeling is completely normal. The important thing is not to repress these emotions. David's words touched Sarah deeply. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to really feel the weight of everything that had happened. Tears that had long been held back began to flow freely. David respectfully offered a tissue and a friendly shoulder. For long minutes they sat there, Sarah finally releasing all the pain, anger, and sadness she had kept inside. When the tears finally subsided, Sarah felt strangely light, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Thank you, David, she said softly. I think I needed that more than I realized. David smiled gently. Sometimes we need to allow ourselves to feel in order to move forward. And Sarah, from what you've told me, you're on the right path. You're transforming a terrible experience into something positive. As the sun began to set, painting the New York sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. There on that park bench, talking with an old friend, she glimpsed a future where her pain didn't define her, but strengthened her. You know something, David? She said, a small smile forming on her lips. I think I'm going to be okay. David nodded, his gaze full of affection and admiration. I'm sure you will, Sarah. You've always been a force of nature. That hasn't changed. As they walked together out of the park, Sarah felt a renewed determination. The path ahead was still long and undoubtedly full of challenges, but now she knew she had the strength to face them. The night was falling over New York, and with it the end of a chapter in Sarah's life. But it also brought the beginning of something new, something full of possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah was eager to see what tomorrow would bring. The sun had barely risen when Sarah woke up, feeling strangely energized despite the tumultuous events of the past few days. As she prepared her breakfast, she reflected on how drastically her life had changed in recent years. From corporate lawyer to national symbol of ethics and integrity, her journey had been anything but conventional. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Mr. Anderson. "Sarah," he began, his voice mixing pride and hesitation. "First of all, congratulations on how you handled the situation with Amanda. You showed admirable courage and integrity." "Thank you, sir," Sarah replied, feeling there was more to come. "Well, the reason for my call is something else," he continued. "We received an invitation from the UN. They're putting together a global anti-corruption task force and want you to be part of it as a representative from the United States." Sarah almost dropped her coffee cup. "The UN? Me? But how?" Mr. Anderson chuckled softly. "Sarah, you've become an international reference in corporate ethics. Your program has not only transformed the reality here in the United States, but it has also inspired similar initiatives in other countries. The UN wants to leverage your experience and knowledge." Sarah's mind was spinning with the possibilities. A position at the UN would mean leaving New York, leaving the office that had been her home for so many years. It would mean new challenges, a global platform for her ideas. But it would also mean leaving behind many important things and people. "Can I think about it?" she asked, feeling the weight of the decision. "Of course," Mr. Anderson responded understandingly, "but don't take too long. They need an answer in a week." After hanging up, Sarah found herself in a whirlwind of emotions. She decided to take a walk to clear her head. Her feet automatically led her to Central Park, her refuge in moments of doubt. As she walked along the tree-lined paths, Sarah pondered the pros and cons of the offer. On one side, the opportunity to expand her work on a global scale, to really make a difference at an international level. On the other, the fear of the unknown, the apprehension of leaving the life she had built in New York. Lost in thought, she almost didn't notice David approaching. He usually ran in the park on Saturday mornings. "Sarah, is that you?" he called, surprised and happy to see her. Seeing David's familiar and loving face, Sarah felt a wave of emotion. How could she consider leaving him? "David," she began, her voice trembling. "Something happened. I need to tell you." They sat on a nearby bench, and Sarah shared the details of the UN offer. David listened attentively, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. "Wow, Sarah," he said when she finished. "That's incredible. You totally deserve this recognition." "But what about us?" Sarah asked, her voice almost a whisper. "If I accept, it would mean moving to Geneva. I can't ask you to drop everything and come with me." David took her hands in his gaze intense. "Sarah, I love you, and part of loving someone is supporting their dreams. If this is something you want to do, we'll find a way to make it work." David's words brought tears to Sarah's eyes. She hugged him tightly, grateful to have someone so understanding by her side. In the days that followed, Sarah talked to several important people in her life. Jessica, always the best friend, offered unconditional support. "You've earned this, Sarah. The world needs to hear what you have to say." Emily, now a respected lawyer in her own right, was moved by the news. "You've opened so many doors for us here in the States. Imagine what you can do on a global scale." Even Michael, in a brief call from prison, expressed his support. "You have the power to change things, Sarah. Don't waste this chance." By the end of the week, Sarah had made her decision. She gathered her team at the office for a special announcement. "In recent years," she began, looking at the faces that had become like family to her, "we've worked together to create something extraordinary. We've transformed the way companies view ethics in the United States. And now we have the opportunity to take this message to the world." She paused, feeling the weight of the moment. "I've decided to accept the position on the UN task force." The room exploded in applause and congratulations. Mr. Anderson, standing at the back of the room, had tears in his eyes. The following weeks were a rush of preparations. Sarah worked tirelessly to ensure a smooth transition at the office and in the national program. David, showing his unconditional support, began making arrangements to work remotely from Geneva. On the eve of her departure, Sarah organized a small farewell gathering in her apartment. Surrounded by friends, colleagues, and loved ones, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "You've all been an essential part of my journey," she said, raising her glass. "Every challenge, every victory, every moment of doubt, all of this brought me here, and I take a little bit of each of you with me." When the last guest left, Sarah and David were alone, looking at the city through the window. "Are you ready?" David asked softly. Sarah took a deep breath, a serene smile on her lips. "You know what I think I am. It's scary but also exciting. I feel like I'm on the threshold of something big." David hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You're going to do amazing things, Sarah, and I'll be by your side every step of the way." The next morning, as the plane took off, Sarah looked out the window at the city that had been her home for so many years. New York, with all its challenges and beauties, had shaped who she was. Now it was time to take those lessons to the world. With a heart full of hope and determination, Sarah prepared for the next chapter of her life. Geneva, the UN, and a world of possibilities awaited, and she was ready to face each new challenge with the same courage and integrity that had brought her this far. As the plane gained altitude, Sarah smiled to herself. The future was uncertain, but one thing she knew for sure: her journey was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. Winter in Geneva was very different from what Sarah was used to in New York. As she walked through the bustling streets of the International District, wrapped in a heavy coat, she reflected on the past 6 months since her arrival in the city that never sleeps. Her work on the UN task force had proven to be as challenging as it was rewarding. Sarah found herself immersed in a world of international politics, dealing with corruption issues that transcended borders and cultures. Each day brought a new challenge, a new perspective on how ethics and integrity could be interpreted and implemented in different global contexts. That morning, Sarah was heading to a crucial meeting at the UN headquarters. The task force was about to present its recommendations for a new international anti-corruption treaty. Weeks of intense negotiations had led to this moment. As she entered the imposing building, Sarah was greeted by Amina, a colleague from Nigeria who had become a great ally in recent months. "Ready for the big day?" Amina asked, a nervous smile on her face. Sarah nodded, feeling the familiar mixture of anxiety and determination. "As ready as we can be. We're going to change the world today, aren't we?" The two laughed, easing some of the tension of the moment. The conference room was packed with representatives from dozens of countries. Sarah observed the diverse faces around her, each bringing their own experiences and perspectives to the table. It was a powerful reminder of the complexity of the challenge they faced. When it was her turn to speak, Sarah felt the weight of all her experiences, from Michael's betrayal to her successes in the United States, converging on this moment. "Distinguished colleagues," she began, her voice firm and clear, "we are here today not just as representatives of our nations, but as guardians of a more just and ethical future for all. Corruption knows no borders, but our determination to combat it must also know no limits." As Sarah presented the task force's recommendations, she could feel the room responding. There were nods of approval, but also expressions of skepticism and concern. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was prepared for the fight. After hours of heated debates and intense negotiations, a consensus began to form. The task force's recommendations, with some modifications, would be taken forward for formal consideration by the UN General Assembly. Exhausted but exultant, Sarah left the meeting feeling that she had taken a significant step towards real change. In the hallway, she was approached by a representative from France. "Dr. Thompson," he said, extending his hand. "Impressive presentation. I'd like to invite you to give a lecture at Sciences Po in Paris next month. I believe our students could learn a lot from your experience." Sarah accepted the invitation with gratitude, realizing how her influence was expanding beyond her initial expectations. That night, back at the apartment she shared with David, Sarah shared the events of the day. David, who had adapted surprisingly well to life in Geneva, working remotely as a consultant for American companies, listened with attention and pride. "Sarah, you're literally changing the world," he said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." Sarah smiled, feeling grateful to have David by her side on this journey. "Sometimes it seems surreal, you know? From where we came to where we are now." Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the phone. It was Jessica calling from the United States. "Sarah, I just saw the news about the UN meeting. You crushed it." Jessica's excited voice filled the room. Talking to Jessica, Sarah felt a pang of homesickness. Despite all the achievements in Geneva, a part of her still yearned for the familiarity of New York, for the comfort of being among old friends. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself divided between the excitement of her work at the UN and a growing nostalgia. She began to wonder if it was possible to reconcile her global mission with her roots in the United States. The opportunity to explore this question arose unexpectedly. During a video conference with Emily, who now led the ethics program at the firm in New York, an idea began to form. "Emily, what if we expanded the program to all of North America?" Sarah suggested, feeling excited about the possibility. "We could use what I've learned here at the UN and adapt it to our regional reality." Emily's eyes shone with enthusiasm. "That would be amazing, Sarah. We could create a network of professionals committed to ethics across the continent." In the months that followed, Sarah worked tirelessly, dividing her time between her responsibilities at the UN and the development of the new North American program. It was exhausting but deeply gratifying. The project quickly gained momentum. Governments and companies from all over North America showed interest, seeing the initiative as an opportunity to improve their practices and international reputation. A year after her move to Geneva, Sarah found herself on a plane again, this time heading to Toronto for the official launch of the North American Ethics and Integrity Program. Looking out the window, she reflected on the incredible journey her life had been in recent months. The event in Toronto was a resounding success. Representatives from various countries gathered, all united by the common goal of building a more ethical and transparent North America. During her opening speech, Sarah felt a deep connection to her roots and her global mission. "We are here today not just as Americans, Canadians, or Mexicans," she declared, her voice full of passion. "We are here as citizens of a world that yearns for change. Our journey began in different places, but our destination is common. A future where integrity is not the exception, but the rule." As the audience applauded, Sarah felt that she had finally found the balance she was seeking. She could be a global voice at the UN and still maintain a deep connection to her homeland and her region. That night, in a small celebration with David and some of the new North American colleagues, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. "You know," she said to David, watching the Toronto skyline through the hotel window, "I think I finally understood. It's not about choosing between being global or local. It's about using our voice wherever we are to make a difference." David smiled, hugging her. "And your voice, Sarah, is echoing around the world." Sarah nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose and fulfillment. The road ahead was still full of challenges, she knew. There would be obstacles, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But now more than ever, she was certain of her mission. As night fell over Toronto, Sarah made a silent promise to herself to continue fighting for a more ethical and just world, one step at a time, one country at a time, one heart at a time. Her journey, she realized, was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. The rising sun painted the Geneva horizon with shades of pink and orange as Sarah woke up. She had a strange feeling, as if something important was about to happen. Checking her phone, she saw a notification that made her heart skip a beat. Michael would be released from prison that day. The news caught her by surprise. Although she knew this day would eventually come, Sarah wasn't prepared for the conflicting emotions that flooded her. Anger, sadness, curiosity, and even a hint of compassion, everything mixed in a whirlwind in her chest. David, noticing her agitation, hugged her from behind. "Is everything okay?" Sarah showed him the notification, unable to find words at that moment. "Oh," David said softly. "How are you feeling about this?" She sighed deeply. "Honestly, I don't know. It's like a chapter I thought I had closed is being reopened." Throughout the day, as she participated in meetings and teleconferences at the UN, Sarah couldn't get Michael out of her head. She wondered how he was doing, if he had really changed, what he planned to do now that he was free. Late in the afternoon, her phone rang. It was an unknown number with a New York area code. With her heart racing, she answered. "Hello? Sarah?" Michael's voice sounded hesitant on the other end of the line. "It's me. I was hoping I could talk to you." Sarah felt her legs weaken and sat down in the nearest chair. "Michael, I wasn't expecting your call." There was a tense pause before Michael continued. "I know, and I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but I needed to thank you." "Thank me?" Sarah asked, confused. "Yes," Michael replied, his voice choked with emotion. "For not giving up on me completely. For giving me the chance to try to make things right, even if from afar. Your example, your strength, was what kept me focused on really changing during all this time in prison." Sarah remained silent for a moment, processing his words. Part of her wanted to hang up, to protect herself from possible new disappointments. But another part, the part that had learned the value of compassion and forgiveness throughout her journey, compelled her to continue listening. "What do you plan to do now, Michael?" she finally asked. I want to make a difference, Sarah, just like you've been doing. I thought about using my experience to warn young entrepreneurs about the dangers of corruption. Maybe work with rehabilitation programs for ex-inmates. I know I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can prevent others from making the same mistakes." Michael's words sounded sincere, and Sarah found herself touched by his apparent transformation. Still, years of experience had taught her to be cautious. "That sounds noble, Michael. I sincerely hope you follow this path." "Sarah," Michael hesitated, "I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think you could ever forgive me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded with history. Sarah closed her eyes, letting the memories of the past flow through her mind, the pain of betrayal, the struggle to rebuild her life, the growth she experienced along the way. "Michael," she began slowly, "forgiveness is a process. It's not something that happens overnight, but I'm willing to believe that people can change, that they can redeem themselves. If your actions from now on reflect your words, then yes, maybe one day forgiveness will be possible." She could hear Michael breathing deeply on the other end of the line. "Thank you, Sarah. It's more than I deserve. I promise I won't waste this chance." After hanging up, Sarah sat in silence for a long time, reflecting on the conversation. When David arrived home, he found her still lost in thought. "Did something happen?" he asked, concerned. Sarah shared the details of the call with him. David listened attentively, offering his silent support. "What do you think?" she asked, seeking his opinion. David pondered for a moment. "I think you handled it with a lot of grace and wisdom, Sarah, offering the possibility of forgiveness without compromising your principles. That shows how much you've grown." His words brought a smile to Sarah's face. She realized that this conversation with Michael wasn't just about him, but about who she had become. The woman she was now, strong, compassionate, and wise, was capable of facing her past without being consumed by it. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself reflecting on forgiveness and redemption in a broader context. In her work at the UN, she began to explore rehabilitation and reintegration programs for people involved in corruption schemes. During an international conference on the subject, Sarah shared her personal experience, speaking openly about Michael for the first time in a public forum. "The fight against corruption is not just about punishment," she declared to a packed room. "It's about transformation. Transformation of systems, yes, but also of individuals. If we want to create a global culture of integrity, we need to believe in people's capacity to change and offer paths for that change." Her speech resonated deeply with the audience, generating animated discussions and new policy proposals. Sarah realized that she had found a new dimension in her work, one that united justice with compassion, responsibility with the opportunity for redemption. Weeks later, Sarah received an email from Emily. Michael had approached the office in New York, offering to share his story as part of the corporate ethics program. Emily wanted to know if Sarah approved of the idea. After long reflection and a frank conversation with David, Sarah replied, "Emily, I believe everyone deserves a second chance if they are truly committed to change. If Michael is willing to use his experience to educate others, I think we should give him that opportunity. However, I suggest a probationary period and constant supervision. Trust, once broken, needs to be rebuilt gradually. Sending the email, Sarah felt as if she was turning another page in her story. She had transformed one of the most painful experiences of her life into a force for positive change, not just for herself, but for the world around her. That night, walking hand in hand with David through a park in Geneva, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. The path that had brought her here had been winding and often difficult, but each challenge, each obstacle, had shaped her into the woman she was today. "You know," she said, stopping to watch the sunset over the city, "I think I finally understood something important." "What's that?" David asked, curious. "That our journey never really ends. Each ending is just the beginning of something new. And that's okay." David smiled, hugging her. "And what an incredible journey it has been, Sarah. I can't wait to see what comes next." Sarah nodded, her heart full of gratitude and hope. The future, with all its challenges and possibilities, awaited. And she was ready to face it, not with fear or resentment, but with courage, compassion, and an unwavering belief in the power of integrity to transform lives and the world. 5 years had passed since Sarah arrived in Geneva. Time flew by, bringing with it a series of changes and achievements that she could hardly believe when she reflected on her journey. On a sunny spring morning, Sarah found herself at the top of the Jet d'Eau, observing the city that had become her second home. Beside her, David held her hand, a bright ring on his ring finger, a symbol of the commitment they had made just a few months ago. "It seems like yesterday that we arrived here, doesn't it?" David commented, his voice mixing nostalgia and admiration. Sarah nodded, a soft smile on her lips. "And at the same time, it feels like we've lived several lives since then." Sarah's phone vibrated, interrupting the moment. It was a message from Emily. "Guess what? The ethics program we expanded to North America has just been adopted by the European Union as a model. You started something really big, Sarah." The news filled Sarah with deep joy. The work she had begun years ago, born out of her own pain and overcoming, was now impacting entire continents. "Good news?" David asked, noticing her smile. Sarah shared the message, her eyes shining with emotion. "It's amazing to think about how it all started, David. From such a dark moment in my life, something was born that's really making a difference in the world." As they descended from the observation deck, Sarah reflected on the events of recent years. Her work at the UN had grown exponentially, leading her to spearhead global anti-corruption initiatives. She had traveled the world, from meeting rooms in Brussels to remote communities in Africa and Asia, always carrying with her the message of integrity and transformation. The program she had started in the United States and later expanded to North America was now an international model of success. Companies, governments, and non-governmental organizations from around the world sought her expertise to implement ethical policies and create cultures of integrity. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. Sarah faced opposition from powerful groups that benefited from systemic corruption. There were veiled threats and attempts to discredit her work, but each obstacle only strengthened her determination. That afternoon, Sarah had a special commitment. She had been invited to give a lecture at the Graduate Institute Geneva for a postgraduate class in global ethics and governance. As she took the podium, Sarah looked at the young and eager faces before her. She saw in them the same fire, the same passion for justice that had driven her on her own journey. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice calm and confident. "Today, I want to share with you not just theories and statistics, but a story. My story. A story that I hope illustrates the power each of us has to create significant changes in the world." As she narrated her journey, from the discovery of Michael's betrayal to her current work at the UN, Sarah saw the students' eyes widen with surprise, shine with inspiration, and sometimes fill with tears of empathy. "What I've learned over these years," she continued, "is that integrity is not just an abstract concept. It's a choice we make every day, in every interaction, in every decision. And these choices, no matter how small they may seem, have the power to create waves of change that spread far beyond ourselves." At the end of the lecture, a young student raised her hand. "Dr. Thompson, After everything you've been through, how do you maintain hope? How do you not become cynical in the face of so much corruption in the world? Sarah smiled, touched by the question. Hope, my dear, is not something we find in the outside world. It's something we cultivate within ourselves. Every time we choose to do the right thing, even when it's difficult, we're nurturing that hope. And the more people make these choices, the stronger that light becomes. After the lecture, while talking with some enthusiastic students, Sarah received another message. This time, it was from Michael. Sarah, I just wanted you to know that the mentoring program for ex-inmates that we started in New York is completing its first year. We've already helped over 100 people rebuild their lives. Thank you for believing in the possibility of change. Your strength continues to be an inspiration to all of us. Reading the message, Sarah felt a wave of emotions. The path to forgiveness and reconciliation had been long and sometimes painful, but seeing Michael truly committed to making a difference brought a sense of closure that she didn't know she still needed. That night, at an intimate dinner with David, Jessica, who was visiting from New York, and some close friends they had made in Geneva, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. You know, she said, looking at the beloved faces around the table, when I think about everything that's happened in recent years, I realize that each challenge, each obstacle, was actually a gift. A gift? Jessica asked, intrigued. Sarah nodded. Yes, each difficulty taught me something, made me stronger, more compassionate, more determined, and it brought me here, surrounded by amazing people doing work that I love and that really matters. David raised his glass. To Sarah, the most incredible woman I know, may your light continue to illuminate the world. Everyone toasted, and Sarah felt her heart overflow with gratitude and love. Later, back at the apartment, Sarah and David walked to the balcony, observing the lights of the city that never sleeps. And now? David asked softly. What's the next chapter? Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with the promise of the future. Honestly, I don't know. And that's the most exciting part. Each day is a new opportunity to make a difference, to grow, to love. All I know is that I want to continue on this journey, facing each challenge with courage and integrity. David hugged her, planting a soft kiss on her forehead. And I'll be by your side every step of the way. As the couple watched the Geneva skyline, Sarah reflected on the incredible cycle her life had gone through. From a young lawyer in New York, through moments of deep betrayal and pain, to becoming a global leader in the fight for ethics and integrity. But more than her professional achievements, Sarah was proud of the person she had become. Someone who had learned to transform adversity into strength, pain into compassion, and challenges into opportunities for growth. The future, with all its mysteries and possibilities, stretched out before her, and Sarah was ready to embrace it with open arms, knowing that each new day would bring with it the chance to make a difference, to touch lives, and to continue her journey of growth and self-discovery. As the stars shone over the city, Sarah made a silent promise to herself to continue living with courage, integrity, and love, inspiring others to do the same. Because, in the end, she had learned that true change begins within each of us and spreads to the world like ripples in a lake, touching lives in ways we could never imagine. And so, with a heart full of gratitude for the past and hope for the future, Sarah prepared for the next chapter of her extraordinary journey, eager to see what new adventures, challenges, and opportunities tomorrow would bring.